and welcome back to another episode of How Did We Not Know That? My name's Jack.
And I'm Nat.
And today, Nat switched her topic on me, so I don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I switched my topic last minute, but today we're talking about the life of Eva Perón from Argentina.
Hey,
have you heard of Eva Perón?
Is that the girl that the musical was made off of? Anita? No.
Evita, yeah. Yeah, it is the Eva Perón from Evita. Have you seen the musical? Do you know?
No. Obviously, I just know the Don't Cry For Me Argentina song.
When I tell you, I listened to that song on repeat, like, the whole time I was doing my research. My poor sister, who's living with me now, like, she wanted to strangle me because that's all I've been singing, like, the past few days. So, it's a great song. We have some exciting news for our listeners. We have a website at www.hdwnkt.com. If you go to our website, we have all of our episodes, our audio is up on there, and we have some really great study guides for you. So if you are like us and you're preparing for the Foreign Service Officer test, or you just want to study history in more depth, more detail, I definitely encourage everyone to go check out our study guides and our notes for every episode. Yeah, we have those up, so please check us out. So, Eva Perón. Her real name, like her original maiden name, is Eva Duarte, but her nickname was Evita, and she was born on May 7th, 1919, in the small town of Los Todos, Argentina. Her parents were Juan Duarte and Juana Ibarguren. So her parents, Juan and Juana, they were her parents, but they were not married. But they had 4 children together. But actually her father, Juan, was already married to another woman, and he had another family. So he was not, like, very supportive, and he didn't have a large presence in her life. So I think her family struggled financially because of that. So she was born into a very poor family. And actually when she was 6, her father died in a car accident. And so after that, their financial situation got even worse. So they were already very poor, and now they lost another source of income. So a few years after her father's death, Eva and her family moved to Junín, Argentina, and everyone in the family worked in order to survive and, like, put food on the table. So, like, all the children worked, like, odd jobs, both day and night, and, like, they boarded people. Was that the right word? Like, they rented,
like Airbnb,
like, the little space that they had. Yeah, basically, like, they let people stay in their home even though it, like, was not a large home. And yeah, they all had, like, lots of hard manual labor jobs. But Eva, her dream was to become an actress. And, like, it's really cute. When she was little, her and her sister Herminda would perform plays together. And so, like, she always had this dream to be on the stage, and she had a very, like, theatrical soul. Eva was only 15 years old. She decided to move to Buenos Aires, the capital, in order to, like, pursue her acting career. So at 15, like, she moved by herself, and she's like, I'm gonna make a name for myself, with, like, no support, you know? And she actually, like, she was able to find work with a number of different theater companies. And in 1937, she actually got her first film role. And she also got a contract to perform on the radio because, like, that was the big form of media at the time. And yeah, after that, like, over the next few years, she continued to work in, like, different theater productions. And it's really incredible. When she was only 20 years old, she created her own entertainment business, which was called the Company of the Theater of the Air, which I think the Spanish name sounds a lot better, but I only found the English name. But yeah, so basically her entertainment...
I wouldn't have gone with that name, but... Wow, she's like an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and, like, this is in the 1930s, too, so, like, like, I mean, that's a lot of hard work. And on top of that, she's a young woman in the 1930s. So I can't imagine, like, how hard that must have been. Like, she had a lot of determination. And yeah, so her entertainment company, like, produced their own radio programs. And I think it had, like, pretty good success. And on top of this, like, Eva was very beautiful, and, like, lively and very, like, charismatic. People just really liked her, like, as soon as they met her, and she had a really good reputation. And she eventually caught the attention of Colonel Juan Perón, and he was known as, like, the rising star in Argentine politics. So he was, like, a really big deal in politics. So Juan Perón, he was kind of a controversial former vice president. Actually, in 1943, a couple of years before he met Eva, he joined a military coup against Argentina's civilian government. And so that coup was successful, and they overthrew the president. And after they overthrew the president, he was appointed as Secretary of Labor. And then he gained more power, more influence in politics. And then in 1944, he became vice president as well as Minister of War. And so, just like a side note, like, Argentinian politics and history involves a lot of military coups. So, like, that was not the first coup, and it definitely will not be the last. So I guess, yeah, military coups are just a lot more common there than I knew. So that was something I did not know before my research. But yeah, so basically in October 1945, so Juan Perón is vice president and minister of war, but then he's ousted from his position by another coup. So he, like, gained power through a coup, and then another coup is like, actually, no, get out of here. So he's imprisoned, and at this point in time, he had already met Eva, and, like, they're already dating, you know, and, like, so they're dating while he's vice president, and then he becomes imprisoned. And so, like, all his supporters, who are mostly from working class, and then as well as Eva, like, they persuaded the people holding him in prison, that, like, they persuaded him to be, they got him to be released, right? So basically, Eva is very charismatic and persuasive, and so she's like, oh, let him go. And they were like, okay, cool. So he is released from his prison on October 17th, 1945. And as soon as he is released, he addresses a crowd of 300,000 people from the balcony of the presidential palace. And he gives this, like, really motivational, like, really motivating and passionate speech. And he's just like, oh, I'm going to lead the people of Argentina to victory in the next presidential election. He's like, I'm running for president, I'm free, and, like, I'm going to make Argentina a better country. And actually, 4 days after he is released from prison, he marries Eva Duarte. And so they get married, like, as soon as he's released from prison. And during his campaign for president, Eva helps him a lot. Like, she has always had, like, a really strong interest in politics, and she has a lot of good ideas and, like, really strong values and opinions. And so during his campaign, she, like, has a really large presence. And during the campaign, she, like, really quickly becomes the people's favorite, because she knows, like, she came from a really poor family in a small town in Argentina. So she knows what it's like to be, like, to be working class.
Like, yeah, on the bottom.
Right? Like, she understands their struggles and knows how to help. And so, like, this really helps Juan's campaign, and people are like, oh, they love Eva, so they want to vote for Juan. And actually, like, so she wants to fight for the working class, and her nickname for the working class is Los Descamisados, which means like the shirtless ones. Like, they're so poor they don't even have shirts. And so that's kind of what she calls them, and that becomes like,
Yeah.
it's like really powerful in her campaign. And yeah, so she helps him on the campaign trail.
Yeah, this should really be her campaign. I feel like she could have just ran, you know.
Yeah. Like, I think without Eva, maybe Juan would still have won, but like, he would not have been adored by the people. Like, the people loved Eva so much. And like, she's just so charismatic. She's just a really good public speaker. She's very moving and like inspirational. She's beautiful, and people are like, wow, she's like worked so hard. They have a lot of respect for her. And so yeah, so in 1946, Juan wins the election, and he assumes the role of president of Argentina.
I have a question though, because there were a few coup d'etats. Was it a democracy before? Like, what's with the coup d'etats?
It was a civilian government, so like, it was not run by the military. But then when Juan supported like the military coup, that overthrew like the civilian democratic government, and they replaced it with a military government. So it's like, before it was led by democratically elected people, and then they overthrew that president, and then it was like the government, it was all like military men. And they're like, we're your president now. But then he won election. Okay. He won an election too. So it's interesting.
Yeah. It's got layers to that.
Yeah. Before I get into like Eva, I just want to talk about Juan Perón, his presidency, and his whole like political ideology would later be known as like Peronism, which is like a political ideology, and it became like a political party. And so he's like the start of this new ideology, right? And so he was known as like a really populist leader. Like, he appealed to the masses by like promising, you know, like, he's like, oh, I'm here for the working people, I'm here to fight for you. And so he had a lot of support from the working class. And he just had like, he wanted Argentina to be self-sufficient. He didn't want the country to have to rely on other countries in the region, or like big influential powers like the UK or obviously America. And so he's like, oh, you know, like, we got to make Argentina strong. We got to be proud of ourselves, you know? So yeah, people really liked that message. He made a lot of changes in regards to like social benefits, social welfare. So especially for urban industrial workers in Argentina who had like really horrible living conditions and living standards. He wanted the state of Argentina to take the leading role in the economy, in order to ensure cooperation between business and labor. So like, when the state has like a larger role in the economy, that kind of like veers towards communism. But I guess like he had these virtues, and his idea for Argentina would later be known as justicialismo, or social justice. It's also referred to as third position. And so it's a populist system, and it's also an authoritarian system, which means that there's not freedom or civil rights, you know? And it's kind of seen as like in between communism and capitalism. So it's not completely communism, it's not completely capitalist, somewhere in the middle.
Isn't that like every government is like not completely communist, not completely capitalist?
You got it.
It's like everyone.
I mean, yeah, that's right. That's true. But it's like interesting. I don't know. It's like, for me, it's like such a bizarre mix because, like, okay, so for example, like, he's fighting for the rights of, like, the working class of Argentina. So he puts Argentina on a course of industrialization. He wants to, like, modernize Argentina and make it like a self-sufficient country. And so in order to do that, he wants to, like, intervene in the economy and, like, have more like control over every aspect of the economy. He, like, nationalizes railroads and other utilities, which means, like, the state, like, Argentina owns it. There's no private companies that own railroads or, like, gas, water, you know, like, the country, Argentina owns it. And that's, like, a communist characteristic. But then, like, he is also, like, an authoritarian leader. And so he puts his political opponents in prison, and he restricts freedom of the press. And, like, basically the entire country, the political life is dictated by the military. Like, he is a military man. And so the military, it's, like, very much a military government. And so, like, yeah, like, some parts of the country are, like, very restricted, and, like, some of them, they just completely eliminated constitutional liberties and civil rights. Like, so I don't know.
Wow, that sounds scary.
Right? So it's like he wants to help the people,
but to what extent? Like, stuff being under the government sounds fine, like the industrial wanting that, but, like, I don't know if you need to restrict, like, freedom of the press to do that. But I'm American, so I'm biased.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I think, I feel like there's a good argument for freedom of the press, you know?
Yeah, especially in a military government, I'd be like, okay. Like,
yeah. And, like, well, wait till you hear this, because then it's like, okay, you're already like, like, that doesn't look good. And then later, in 1949, he arranges a convention in order to write a new constitution for Argentina that would allow his re-election, because basically he had reached his term limit, and then he's like, oh, let me just change the rules.
Yeah, see,
so
that's where you have the problems, is like that part, right? Not stepping down.
So Juan Perón, you can have, like, your own opinions about him. He is definitely controversial. Okay, but he, like, inspired this whole ideology of Peronism and, like, this weird mix between, like, communism, capitalism, and actually, like, the Peronist, like, party, it still exists today. Perón is, like, no longer in office. After that, there haven't been any, like, Peronist leaders until this year. The current president of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez, he is, like, a self-declared Peronist. So that's interesting. So that's, like, it's been a while, you know, since Juan was in office.
Yeah. Question, how long did Juan serve? Because did he successfully extend his term?
It's a bit complicated, so I'll get into it, because it's not, like, linear. It's not linear or consecutive. He doesn't serve. Yeah, so I'll get into it in a bit, but yeah. So enough about Juan. We're here to talk about Eva, because I love her so much. So Eva had such a large influence in Juan's administration, and technically she never held an actual, like, official government position. She was just, like, the first lady, the president's wife. But she became the de facto minister of health and labor. That was, like, her passion, was working, like, she let me see how to phrase this. She didn't think of, like, oh my God, in regards to her fight for the, like, the los descaminados, the shirtless ones, she didn't think of it as, like, charity, like, oh, I, like, want to give, you know, I want to help you. It was just, like, she thought of it as, like, she was giving them their rights that they deserved, and she was, like, fighting for justice for them. Like, she was like, you guys, like, she's not looking down on them. She's like, I'm one of you, and this is like a basic human right that you guys deserve, so let's like get that for you. So I think like that was really great. And so she gives generous wage increases to unions, and so people get paid more. And before Juan assumed office, basically Argentina had this thing called the Sociedad de Beneficencia, which is like the aid society, which is their like welfare program. But it was not great. It was like corrupt and ineffective. It didn't actually benefit lower class people. And so she replaced it with her own Eva Perón Foundation. And this was like supported, like this was funded through quote unquote voluntary union and business contributions. So like they were kind of pressured to give money to this foundation. Also, a large portion of the funds came from the National Lottery, which I kind of don't really understand that, but that's what I found.
Sounds a little sketch. There might be something corrupt going on there.
Right? Right? Like, that's the thing, is like, and then other funds. And so, like, the funding for her foundation does seem a little sketchy, but, like, the money that it did make was all used to, like, build thousands of hospitals and schools and orphanages, retirement homes. And so, like, it was put to good cause. It wasn't like she pocketed it. And so, like, it was just, like, a huge change in the country. Like, it helped so many people all across the country, like, young people, old people, you know. But because of this, because she, like, rewrote the entire system, you know, she made a lot of enemies among, like, the traditional elite. You know, she was shaking things up, and the people on top did not like that. So she was loved by the people of Argentina, but not the, like, high society political people, you know. And she was also a huge feminist, which was really big, like, especially at the time. Like, this is, like, a really big deal. She's pretty much the reason during Juan's administration, they passed a women's suffrage law. So before Juan, women couldn't vote at all. And then he assumes office, and then they give women the right to vote. And it was pretty much because of Eva. Like, that, it's not like Juan disagreed with it, but, like, Eva was so passionate about it that she's like, okay, we need to get this passed. Like, that was her mission. So then women in Argentina could vote, which is amazing. And in 1949, Eva established her own political party, the Peronista Feminist Party. So she's, again, I said it a million times, like, literally, like, everyone in Argentina, except for, like, the elites, like, everyone loves her so much. And, like, around the world too, like, people, she's always in the news because, like, she's so beautiful and, like, well dressed, and, like, her success story is just, like, so inspirational, and she's just such a moving public speaker, and she's, like, doing so much work in such a short amount of time, you know. It's like only over the course of a few years, so much change has been made in Argentina. So the whole world is watching her. And so now I get to the sad part. So in 1950, Eva Perón was diagnosed with cervical cancer, and the diagnosis was terminal. And so she was told that, like, she would only have a few years to live. Oh my God, it's so sad. And in 1951, even though she's literally dying of cancer, she obtains the nomination for vice president, because Juan is running for re-election, and he's like, I want you to be my VP, because she basically is already doing the work. Like, she's like basically helping run the country anyway, so it's like, just freaking make it official. But the army makes her withdraw her candidacy. So again, like, the military has a huge influence over Argentine politics, and that's just, like, a reoccurring theme throughout its history. And so in June 1952, Eva makes her final public appearance at Juan's second inauguration. So he is elected by the people again because they really love him and they love Eva. So they're like, please run again. And he is elected. And yeah, his inauguration is like the last time you see her. And like, oh my gosh, I saw photos. Like, so they're like driving through a parade in a car and they're like in a little convertible and they're like standing and waving. And like apparently like they had to build like this cast thing to like that she wore under her coat so that she could stand up because she was in such poor health that like she couldn't stand up on her own, and especially in a moving car. But like you really can't tell she's wearing this like beautiful giant fur coat and she looks amazing. And like she's like looks so happy, she's waving to all the people. And sadly, on July 22nd, 1952, Eva Perón dies of cervical cancer in Buenos Aires. And she was only 33 at the time of her death. So she was so young.
Wow. 33? What?
Right?
She's so young. What?
Yeah, literally,
Wait,
like
literally
33
so
is
sad. I'm looking
like,
at
oh my
pictures
God, she
right
died
now,
so young.
and like I think that the illness really aged her because I was like, oh, like she seems like she was like maybe like 50s, 40s, but
Yeah.
no, that's 33 is so young. That's really sad.
She's so incredibly young when she dies, but like also like, oh my God, by the time she was 33, she had accomplished so much. Like she was a successful actress and she did that all by herself. Like she had no insights into the like acting business. She started her own entertainment company and then she literally is like running the country and like she's creating all these like social welfare programs, and like this is all in her like late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah. No, that's so amazing. There's like no internet. There's like you have no idea where you're going. You just go and like figure it out. That's really amazing.
Right. And like she had grown up
roots. Like she's successful and she's still
right?
giving back to
literally. It's so incredible to like think about. And she had grown up in such a like poor household in a small town, so like obviously her education was a lot different than the other people like beside her in the government, but she like went above and beyond, despite her lack of quality education.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So Ava's funeral is actually like, so it's they gave her the same funeral as they would for a head of state. So if the president died, it's like the same level. So that pretty much goes to show you how highly people thought of her and like how much influence she had over the country. And like people are just devastated all over the world, and like just shocked, obviously, because she's so young. But even after her death, Eva has such a strong influence over Argentine politics. Actually, her supporters, they tried to have her canonized, which is like...
It's like in the Catholic Church to like become a saint, yeah.
Yeah, they want to have her become a saint, but that is unsuccessful. Yeah, also, so the first woman elected as president of Argentina, her name is Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner. She said that, like, she claims that women of her generation, like, owe a great deal of debt to Eva Perón, for, like, her example of passion and combativeness. That's the word she used. And, like, she was just like, oh, Eva had such a huge influence over women in Argentina and really set the course for the rest of its history, So finally, this is the life of Eva Perón. A lot of people probably know her from the hit musical Evita, which was written in 1979 by Tim Rice and Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's a great musical. I think it won a Tony, maybe. I'm actually not sure. And then in 1996, Madonna stars as Eva Perón in the film version, and like Antonio Banderas is in it, and he plays Che Guevara. So I actually haven't seen the movie. I tried to find it on Netflix, but they don't like have it here in Korea, and I didn't want to spend money, so I have not seen the movie. But like for those of you who have seen the musical and the movie, a lot of it is fictional. Like it's based on her life, but a lot of it is dramatized.
Yeah.
A lot of it is not true. So just like a fair warning, like you should do like separate research. But yeah, that's basically the story of Eva Perón and her influence on Argentine politics and government. And yeah.
Yay! Thank you so much, Nat, for covering her. She sounds very interesting. It also gave us a good look into Argentine.
Yeah, Argentine.
Argentine?
Yeah, Argentine.
How did I not know
that?
Yeah, Argentine politics. So, yeah, very good. Thanks for that.
Yay, thanks for listening. And everyone, don't forget to check out our study guides at www.hdwnkt.com.
Yay.
Yay. All right. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye. This has been an episode of How Did We Not Know That?
If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
You can also follow us on all social media, including YouTube, at How Did We Not Know That?
If you thought our podcast was low quality, we know. We thought so too. Help us improve the podcast by contributing to our Patreon.
Thank you for listening, and see you guys next week.